Hey, how's it going everybody? It's your boy, and well, today I've got a video about somebody who I've never done a video on before, but somebody who I really should have done a long time ago because she's only gone and jumped the shark again. Yeah, she's jumped the shark a fair few times, but for some reason it never seems to get reported much. And I'm talking about Liana K and her flu-induced reaction to Count Dankula. It just seems weird that Buddha, this little harmless pug that just wants to do what pugs do, can expose people for such extreme things. On the one hand, it can expose you for good things. You could be shown to be a free speech advocate and somebody who has principles, and on the one hand, it could be somebody like Liana K, who doesn't have any principles whatsoever and is essentially a feminist Trojan horse, although she kind of hides in plain sight, whereas Trojan horses don't, but I can't think of a better metaphor, without describing her in a similar way to a noted evil man from Britain, but I don't want to go down that road. So we've got that out of the way, and let's just get into this and see how far the rabbit hole goes. And it all starts with a blog post. I'm not going to go through the whole blog post, just the stuff that's relevant, where she actually talks about him rather than deviating off into things like 4chan and stuff like that. So let's just read it, and you know, I'll provide the link in the description for you to read it in full context. So let's go. I've decided to write out my thoughts here instead of repeating the same things to multiple people who have asked my opinion. The latest hot take scorching the internet is the case of a YouTuber who goes by Count Dankula teaching his girlfriend's dog to do a Nazi salute. He's been convicted of gross offensiveness and hate speech under Scottish law because in 2016 he decided to make a video with the primary purpose of upsetting his girlfriend, complete with images of Hitler and comments like, "Gas the Jews." He claimed this was all just a joke, but it was a joke. It's not a he claimed, no, it was a joke. And by the way, it wasn't Scottish law, it was British law, although that said, in the trial they did charge him under one Scottish law and a British law, but, oh well, whatever. Details. Declaration of potential personal bias time. I have a comedy background. I've had broadcast standards rulings made against me, but those rulings didn't involve a criminal conviction. The TV station just had to put up a message between shows apologising for causing offence. I think that the Canadian system for dealing with this sort of thing seems much more commensurate with the harm caused. Unfortunately, there's no equivalent of the Canadian Broadcast Standards Council for YouTube. Perhaps there should be. Or maybe just have calmer heads in YouTube and saner heads, where they can just see that, yeah, a joke was a joke, and we don't need to go around brutalising YouTube channels because advertisers say so. By the way, there is no potential bias here. Well, not because she's a comedian anyway, but we'll get into that. I'm also Jewish. Some people think I'm a fake Jew, or that I don't look Jewish, but when it comes down to it, I have personal investment in both sides of the fallout of Count Dankula's thoroughly foolish behaviour. I've heard the family stories of suffering in the Holocaust. She's married to a Jew who's the guy who's behind Ed the Sock. Yes, that sock. The SAW sock. And no, she is not Jewish by blood, but by marriage. So when people call her a fake Jew, they're only half right. She's married into one and has thus become one, because that's the thing. So she kind of is, but also kind of isn't. And that's taken upon herself to talk for all Jews, even though she's the last person who should be talking for all Jews. In fact, nobody can. But that's besides the point, isn't it? I also tend to get annoyed when people train animals that aren't theirs to do annoying crap. It's disrespectful and rude. I've had people do that with my dog, and retraining the dogs is a huge pain in the ass. Then you should keep the dogs away from your friends, or people that you don't know. Why would anyone do that anyway? Why would you let them do that? You do know that training a dog takes a long time, so you basically left them with your dog and they did this for a long time. And by the way, this is one of the main reasons why she thinks that he should go to jail. Yeah. So I think that Count Dankula, legal name Marcus Meehan, is a complete arsehole. As the sheriff in his case pointed out, he knew what he did was offensive, and he knew why it was offensive. He did it anyway, to be an arsehole. To his girlfriend, not to Jews, but definitely to Nazis, and he did say he did not mean offence in the video, even though he knew it could be misconstrued as offensive. He made it clear twice in his video, at the beginning and in the middle, that he was not a Nazi, that he did not mean to offend people, he just wanted to piss off his girlfriend. You're not mentioning that caveat. There was no greater purpose to his stupid behaviour, so the people online comparing him to political dissidents with an actual point, you're assholes too. Oh really now, I'm an arsehole, not the other people, like David Baddiel. an actual Jew, and Skeptor, an actual Jew, and me, who's not a Jew, and Sargon of Akkad, and Tommy Robinson, all these other people, we're assholes for defending this guy, because he is a political dissident, because it was the Scottish police, the establishment, who are government owned, so therefore it was the Scottish government, technically, who went after him and convicted him. It's amazing how you have to, just lie by omission to make him out to be something that he isn't, and somehow point the blame at me and others. When entertainers like Howard Stern deliberately cause offence, they're in service to a higher cause. When Stern got fined over a conversation about masturbating to pictures of Aunt Jemima, but not when he said he hoped the FCC shares prostate cancer came back, people started to realise that the FCC rules are flamingly ridiculous. But Dankula's done the same thing, but with a country's law, rather than the FCC. Just because he's in a more respected field, even though they're technically both comedians, and hell, they even do similar formats, does that mean that one is therefore worthy of being protected? Is that what you're saying? I mean, again, this is where the personal bias comes in. You're a TV person, you're Jewish, well, whatever, and you don't like people training dogs that aren't theirs, even though technically speaking Buddha can be considered his dog because he lives with his girlfriend and he lives with Buddha. So, but again, I don't see the point. Both have shown how ridiculous these rules and laws are by doing similar things. Yet apparently they're different because Dankula is an arsehole in your opinion, and all he did was do a prank. Even though masturbating to pictures of Aunt Jemima was a joke, and the prostate cancer thing was also a joke or an insult. So that's a valid challenge to free speech norms. Sometimes free speech rules are set by arseholes, and that's how I feel about the laws in Scotland. Serving jail time for bigotry doesn't make someone less of a bigot. Shit, the gangs in jail organise along race lines. So because it was Howard Stern and he pointed out hypocrisy, that means that it's valid, even though Dankula did the exact same thing, because we're watching Dad's Army and Monty Python and other comedy shows like Allo Allo, for example, where people do Nazi salutes all the time because it's set in occupied France in World War II. Heil Hitler. Heil Hitler. That's okay, but Dankula can't do the same thing with his dog on YouTube. But apparently Howard Stern is like a valid challenge to free speech norms. I don't know what is valid in your opinion other than it has to be from a respectable source. Okay, and I don't get the non sequitur with the gangs in jail. Meekin is clearly in contravention of this law. He put the video on YouTube to intensify the distress and embarrassment that his prank would cause his girlfriend. He had very few subscribers at the time and shared it amongst his mates. He had like 10. So what if this was a contravention of this law? Technically speaking, it could not be as well, because the judge had to ignore all the context. He basically set a precedent within this law that in order to get them convicted, you don't have to abide by context. And let's not forget that other people have done similar jokes in public and on YouTube and in other places since 2003 and have not gone to jail. So the law itself seems to be applied willy-nilly and to whoever is unfortunate enough to be arrested for it. And let's not forget that it's highly subjective. Did I imply that? Yes, I did. It's incredibly subjective, even though they claim there's an objective way to measure offence, even though there isn't. And they kind of prove themselves wrong in that aspect by subjectively saying that he was a Nazi. Even though he only had 8 subscribers at the time, he was creating conditions to have those 8 subscribers and anyone who they chose to share with participate in committing a cruel act against his girlfriend by teaching her dog antisocial behaviours. Oh, it's an antisocial behaviour now, is it, to teach a pug a trick for a joke? And it's not even cruel. I guess it's assholes, but it's not cruel. Oh, stop treating her like a victim. She's not a victim here. I repeat, Meekin is an arsehole, and this is an arsehole law. Because it's an arsehole law, the judge in this case is correct. No additional context really matters. Why? Why does the context not matter? The context does matter. He's being tried, well, he was tried and convicted of being grossly offensive. So no matter what he says in the video, which shows that he was actually trying not to be offensive, he is offensive because one person in Scotland said that they were offended and the police used that as justification. Interestingly, if Meekin had just trained the dog to do a Nazi salute and not used YouTube, an electronic form of communication, the law would not have applied. It's only illegal because he violated the Malicious Communications Act. Yeah, I know, and that's bullshit, isn't it? But you seem to be defending the government even though you're supposed to be for free speech. Again, because Meekin is just a pleb and a YouTuber, even though you yourself are a YouTuber, and this could affect you if Canada enacts a similar law, because with Trudeau, that's going to happen. Yeah, apparently he deserves it. Well, oh, Famous last words, right, Liana? So this guy managed to get convicted of a crime where a legitimate defence would have been that he actually did hate Jews and was just talking to another people who hate Jews who he didn't know that he was being offensive. Seriously, how does someone fuck up that badly? Alright, he put up his harazai on YouTube. It means trash. That's what it means. Well, that's your subjective opinion. Millions of people, Jews and non-Jews, found it funny. Meekun is a grown-ass man living under UK law. When a grown-ass man decides to become a YouTuber, he assumes the responsibility to obey the laws where he lives. But YouTube is an American company. Is he going to be abiding by the rules of America? Or Britain? It's a legal grey area, really. If that grown-ass man breaks the law, he is subject to the punishments under that law. It doesn't matter if he agrees with that law. Those are the rules, asshole. Liana K is saying this. Because if this was something to do with a woman, like say wearing a hijab, and she broke the law in Iran, she'd be the first person to defend that woman. Even I myself would also defend that woman, because you need to break these laws in order to get rid of them. That's okay. But when Marcus, the Dankula, makes a joke on the web, which, under this subjective law, could either land him in prison or not even be tried under it at all, yeah, he has to respect the rules, because those are the rules. She's now a law-abiding citizen. She's an authoritarian when it comes to this. Liana. In the rational and just world, we shouldn't need laws preventing giant acts of arseholding. Unfortunately, people throughout history have been such massive arseholes that some thoroughly arsehole laws have ended up on the books. The question of whether the law is just, however, is far more complicated. We can't just let unjust laws stand just because the unjust law only applies to arseholes. Prison is full of arseholes, and all prison often does is make them into bigger arseholes, due to close proximity with other arseholes. You write like a child. Can you, stop telling Marcus to be a grown-ass man while you're writing like a little kid? What does this mean? This doesn't mean that he deserves to go to jail, because the law itself is broken. And it's subjective. 10 years ago, he wouldn't have gone to jail for that, because societal attitudes were slightly different, believe it or not. Yes, that law came into effect 16 years ago, 15 years ago, but the attitude at the time was he probably would have got away with it. But now, he wouldn't, because we're cracking down on that shit. At first, I thought this was a simple issue. I couldn't see a situation where a video that didn't involve child exploitation, sex trafficking or blackmail could really be criminal. But then I thought, am I just saying this because that video did in fact bother me? So I'm going out my way to show I can handle it. Am I being a stupid arsehole here too? So I sat my own ass down and thought about it. So if I did a documentary on slavery or sex trafficking, well, it's the same thing. If it was a documentary highlighting the dangers, I could go to jail for that. Because apparently that would be criminal in your eyes, or... Because you see, she claims in this article that she has the flu, and that's an excuse for any poor writing. I think it's pretty clear that she just writes poorly. Because this is something she does on a daily basis. Like flu or no flu. The more I thought about it, the more I started thinking about the purpose of free speech laws, and whether Meekun's behaviour falls into the realm of free speech exception. Speech with the principal purpose of creating unnecessary panic, otherwise known as falsely yelling fire in a crowded theatre. I don't know how this is in any way similar, but do go on. I'm still not entirely sure about this avenue of thought. Like I said, I have the flu, but I can't entirely shake the idea there might be something here. Why am I making excuses for stupidity? Where have I heard this before? The thinking is that if there actually is a fire in a theatre, you're yelling fire to protect someone from a real threat. If there's no fire, you're creating the conditions for a stampede, therefore creating a potentially dangerous situation where one previously did not exist. The sort of anti-Semitic content that Meekun put on YouTube doesn't just offend people, but it wasn't anti-Semitic because he's making fun of the Nazis, not the Jews, by mocking them with a dog. And also he's trying to annoy his girlfriend, who is not Jewish. Neither is Meekun, and neither are you. Oh, sorry. That's just a technicality. It makes some people lose their freaking minds. Yes, some people are just too sensitive to look for things to be offended by, but the PTSD suffered by survivors of the Holocaust was found to have biologically altered the stress hormones of their children. So one person's too sensitive is another person's transgenerational trauma. Okay, so she links an article that says that it may have biologically altered these hormones. Even if that's the case, does it affect every Jewish person who has Holocaust relatives? Why should that mean that we should not make jokes? So should we just not make any jokes about anybody? I mean, we'll be getting that in a little while longer. And in fact, Holocaust survivors and maybe their direct sons and daughters may not see this because of their age. Remember, we're talking about people in their hundreds, 90s, 80s and 70s. And even then, their descendants, you know, they've probably grown up with this shit online. They're probably used to it at this point. So this is moot. The whole trigger warning thing It's a lot of bullshit because it affects a minority of people, quite clearly, and that doesn't mean we should not tell these jokes. Jokes bring people together, but apparently, according to Liana, that's not the case. You poke at that trauma, you induce panic. Panic can cause a stampede, but only in a select few individuals, possibly, maybe. But that does not make it the same as shouting fire in a theatre. How exactly is this going to cause a stampede where Jews are going to go and get really stressed out about this and go haywire and hurt themselves? Because that's what you're saying. You're basically saying that Jews, at least those with Holocaust survivor ancestors, are in danger of being mentally damaged by a pug. That itself is anti-Semitic, because you're basically saying that these people are far too sensitive, biologically far too sensitive, and basically can't have the mental fortitude to defend themselves or handle jokes of this nature, even though Jews have gone through loads of things, not just the Holocaust, but horrible things. And yet apparently it's the Holocaust that has created this, even though there's been a fair few Jewish genocides. Honestly, you come across more as a racist than Marcus does. And these are supposed to be your people. We know that online stampedes can and do occur, and that they cause psychological harm to the people who get trampled. In Meekin's case, those who see anti-Semitism, even of the casual kind, as a serious social problem, and those who believe in free speech rights above all else, are currently trampling each other online because they're panicking over their pet causes. They're so afraid that their way of life is under threat that they don't care who they stomp, as they race to their moral high grounds. Yeah, it's okay for you to go on your moral high ground and tell us that we're potentially killing Jews, or hurting them for telling jokes. Apparently this affects no other race that has had genocides done to them, apparently. Which makes me question the whole background of this scientific evidence, but okay, because shouldn't gypsies, gays, political dissidents, German liberals, anybody who Hitler killed en masse, have these hormones? Because they weren't the only ones who died. Russians should. Hitler killed 27 million of them. We need to start thinking about YouTube as a very crowded public theatre, because that's exactly what it is. And it's not even the sort of theatre that can inform an audience of content with disclaimers before you buy your ticket. Because of YouTube's faulty autoplay and recommendation features, you could turn it off, and you can actually filter your recommendations by saying not interested, using the colon thing. You know that, right? And YouTube is not like a crowded theatre. YouTube is massive! Massive! Millions of people use it. Hundreds of thousands of creators. How is that a crowded theatre? That's the size of a European continent, if not bigger. Most people will probably not have heard about Marcus's plight. I think YouTube's brain trust has a bunch of assholes too, but I make numerous videos about that. Let's stay on topic here. Yes, stay on topic. And let's have to deal with your brain trust instead. When you do something on a crowded theatre platform like YouTube that you can reasonably expect to cause an extreme reaction, you're yelling fire in that crowded theatre. You're doing something that calibrated to make people freak out. The interesting thing about Mika's case is that he didn't realise how crowded his theatre actually was. He thought there was only 8 people in it, but he didn't realise that was the only row he and his friends were sitting in. 3 million views later, he'd caused an online stampede. No, he didn't. 3 million views later, he's going to jail. There was no stampede. In fact, the police were already after him. They saw it because it was viewed on Reddit. It was shared there. Anyone who thinks it's harmless fun to upload anti-Semitic content to YouTube is probably living in pretty serious echo chamber, which is where stampedes are more likely to form. Define anti-Semitic content. Are we talking about jokes? Are we talking about propaganda? Racist stuff? Or are we talking about somebody's opinions on the Jews? You're painting anti-Semitic in the very broad brush. I'm just saying. Jews are seen by both extreme right and extreme left as a privileged other, and both political extremes continue to sweep religious hate crime statistics under the rug. In the US, UK and Canada, anti-Semitism is the most common driver of religious hate crime by a sizable margin. More common even than the much ballyhooed Islamophobia, precisely because discussions of the Middle East are such a powder keg. Any fanning of those flames could cause an already simmering conflict to boil over. So inciting that sort of fighting is profoundly reckless. The police need tools to keep the public peace. Also, I guess then the Iranian police need tools in order to keep the peace because of all these women taking their hijabs off, right? I mean, that's basically the same argument. oh, we can't be having that, can we? And even then, in what way is Marcus inciting anything here? He's inciting nothing. Stop it. You just don't want people to tell jokes. And that's the end of that, basically. She just continues on going off topic a little bit about 4chan rather than sticking to Count Dankula. And let's go to Twitter, where she tries to say that she isn't against free speech and she doesn't want Marcus to go to jail, but she said that and anybody who says that is lying and are cowards and blah 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 blah. And she's essentially doubling down anyway, so Let's watch the cringe unfold, shall we? And here is the first tweet that I found. A free speech advocate just tried to claim that this is not censorship. I believe this is de facto censorship. So maybe stop screaming at each other and talk. And she's talking about a school getting rid of To Kill a Mockingbird because it's racist, because it uses nigger and stuff like that. Interesting how she doesn't mention who this free speech advocate is. Funnily enough, this is something that she would say, because she's just literally defended the same practice against Dankula. I remember when we syndicated our Canadian TV show to a US partner, they had to censor 3 minutes out of every show. Sorry, the US is not the world leader in the practice of free speech. Yes, it is, because the First Amendment, unless you're a private company which hosts its own service for some reason, which is retarded, I grant you that, but whatever, the First Amendment grants you the right to say whatever you want within reason, because you can't go around basically shouting out fighting words and things like that. They do have their limits, but it's the least amount of limits in the world. You can get away with saying God hates fags and things like that, and no matter how many times people try to send people like the Westboro Baptist Church and comedians to court, they always won because of the First Amendment protects that particular speech. Meanwhile, in my country, and in Australia, and in Canada, nowhere near the same freedoms. Dankula would not be put into prison for that. Just muted someone for calling me a psychopath. But you know people aren't panicking, they're totally calm. That lack of empathy is pretty telling. And now we have a very long tweet thread. I know this is going really long already, but fuck it. It seems like a lot of people do not understand the historical underpinnings of sensitivities to racism, anti-Semitism, even in jokes. Jokes are historically where the seeds of hatred were. First jokes, then cartoons in the paper, then it being okay not to hire those people. No, the jokes do not start the hate. The hate are not sprung from the jokes. The hatred is already there through brainwashing from parents or schools or people or journalists or feminists or anything like that. It doesn't matter really. That's where it comes from. People teaching people these views, giving them a warped view of reality. And can be expressed through jokes. It can be expressed through cartoons. In fact, it doesn't go from one to the other. Are you trying to say jokes start a slippery slope into the Holocaust? Over time, it becomes increasingly okay to mock and exclude the butt of jokes. Then it becomes okay to deny them basics of living. Then it's okay to hurt them. Then it's okay to kill them. Jokes are used to lessen their humanity. Oh, so I guess we just not make jokes about anybody. Let's just all stick together in our little communities, although I myself do not have one being mixed race, but whatever, and just not interact with each other aside from maybe just daily life, like going to the shop, in the school, potentially. No, don't make jokes with each other, don't banter to each other and build relationships like jokes actually do. Jokes also help with trauma, and she, being a Jew, should know that some of the greatest comedians of all time are Jewish, and a lot of their dark humour, a lot of the jokes that they make, the influence comes from their ancestors' time, or hell, maybe they experienced that time in the Holocaust. In fact, British humour has similar roots. I'm not saying that we had the genocide, although maybe the harrying of the North is something equivalent to that. Working class British people had horrible conditions to live in, and jokes got them through the rough and tumble of a Victorian life. But no, just don't joke about things. It leads to hate. It's insincere to claim that a guy trained a dog to do the worst thing he could think of, because for most people, the worst thing you can think of is something you have enough empathy to not do to your worst enemy. That lack of empathy and sense is profoundly disturbing. Oh, so Dankula is the one who has no empathy because he taught his dog to do a trick to wind up his girlfriend. Also, I noticed you're doing the same thing that the court did, because they used gas the Jews over and over again to spin a big lie, and this is what you're doing. You know the worst thing you could think of was a Nazi, not a Jew. The truth is, we live in an age where people think black people, Jews, etc. are doing just fine. A few jokes here and there, or every day, no big deal. They don't care that if a Jewish person heard them say gas the Jews to make their dog do a trick. That would be scary. You don't talk for all Jews. You're barely Jewish yourself. Oy vey. You have no idea what is going through this Jewish person's head. They might have found it funny. They might not have cared. They might not even have registered. They may have been offended. They may have found it scary. But it is scary. It's scary that people don't have the basic respect for people who are different to keep their mouths shut when it costs them nothing to do so. The disrespect can turn into dehumanisation a lot faster than people think. People get hurt. Look at Charlottesville. Charlottesville degenerated because the police did not do their job. This is what happens when protests and rallies aren't given the proper security that they need. They degenerate into riots. And deaths can and do happen. What Dankula did is in no way comparable. In fact, no dehumanisation even occurred. You can't dehumanise a dog, nor can a dog be used to dehumanise a person. It only takes one unhinged person, like the guy who killed people in the mosque in Montreal, or a person who tried to kill a Republican politician, or the guy who killed loads of cops in Baton Rouge, or Dallas, to believe that another person is less worthy of life than they are, to cause deaths. It happens so fast, but it's a slow drip, drip, drip to get there. Yeah, but jokes aren't the reason. It's propaganda, it's brainwashing. But even without those extremes, I hate having to wonder whether someone meant a Jew joke. So, they're the bad kind of arsehole, or whether they're just horribly juvenile. Either way, I don't have the time or energy to find out. No, let's just tell them all with the same brush. Let's put them all in prison, shall we? Doesn't matter if they're innocent or guilty. It doesn't matter. If we get 100 innocent people, at least we've got one person who is a definite anti-Semite. Lock ourselves into gated communities as border walls to prevent other communities from talking to each other. Let's just have Northern Ireland, shall we? Yeah, that definitely works. So I totally get why people are upset that Dankula is facing jail time. I agree that it's excessive. But the people who actually thought this joke was funny, I think you need to work on your empathy. Try to understand why some people find it disturbing. It's valid. You need to work on your empathy. You do not get why people are so upset. Otherwise you would not be defending censorious attitudes. Otherwise you would not be calling him an arsehole and me an arsehole for defending him. The reason these jokes can be scary is precisely because they're so casual. It's no big deal to say the worst thing you can think of in a public forum. What's wrong with you? How little regard do you have for other people or yourself? That's disturbing. Again, with the cherry picking of a quote, you're trying to spin a big lie. And I've got nothing wrong with me. I can see why people would find it offensive, but you can't see why people think that it's wrong to throw him in prison. No matter how hard you try to say that you do, you don't. And you don't care. Because to you, you have to defend your people.
Boy, mate.
Keep that stuff on shitposting boards where there is context. Learn some respect and a sense of time and place. Graffiti is illegal when you vandalise another person's property. That's why members of the affected group can make those jokes no one else can. Grow the hell up. Says the woman who writes like a juvenile. But whatever. Let's just break this down. How the hell would posting this on a shitposting board give it context? Why does that automatically give it context? How does it have context? The judge will just ignore it. He'd ignored it. Learn some respect and a sense of time and place. You don't have respect. Stop lecturing people when you yourself have none to give. You do not respect gamers. You do not respect men. You do not respect comedians as a comedian. Really, your husband's a comedian. You're just the person who he tags along because you're hot and it gets views. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Yeah, graffiti is illegal. There's no comparison. It's a false equivalence. What he did is not in any way comparable to graffiti. But anyway, let's move on. Finally, kicked a guy in YouTube comments. He claimed menopause was making me stupid. Fuck you, buddy. Over the line too many times. So she muted somebody for calling her a psychopath, which is a lot worse, but kicked a guy for saying that she's old. Oh, I think absolute mad lad. I think he actually has a point. And there we go. That's it. Liana K. Avoid her at all costs. She's not worth it. She is a Trojan horse. She basically is the worst thing that could possibly happen to gaming. She's pretending to be the sensible feminist. She basically wants people to believe that she's a based mom or a Camille Paglia, but really she isn't. She's nothing like that. She's the complete opposite. She's no different to Leigh Alexander or any of those other people. On that bombshell, it's been your boy, and I'll see you later.